Hi, and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today, I'll be doing a review of the new Seiko Digital Tuna that has been with me for almost a month now. I also did a detailed tutorial on how to use all the functions of this watch, so if you want to check that out, you can click on this link right here. The Digital Tuna was released on May of 2018, and it's a collaboration done with Lowercase. That makes it a bit special for me, as my first watch review on YouTube was the Solar Tuna, the SBEP008, which was the first Lowercase collaboration. Since that was the first ever Solar Tuna, and this is the first ever Digital Tuna, I get the impression Lowercase is pushing Seiko to uncharted territory, which is something I like, as who knows what they will come up with next. Some argue with this watch being called a Tuna, as it's actually a part of the Fieldmaster series, not a diver's watch. But if we go the purest way and start nitpicking, we can argue that even the 300-meter Tuna is not a real Tuna, as it doesn't have the monocoque case, which is something all historical Tunas had. But we refer to it as a Tuna anyways, as it's the unique case shape and the shrouded construction that makes it a Tuna. Because of this, I will keep calling this a Tuna as well, regardless of how it makes other people feel. I mentioned it's not a diver's watch, but it does have everything a diver's watch needs. It comes with 200-meter water resistance, it has a loomed pip on the bezel, so you can track elapsed time in combination with these dots on the outer edge of the screen as they're representing the running minutes, cleverly replacing an analog minute hand. And it comes with a diver's type of strap, a soft silicone strap that has the famous accordion vents to compensate for the change of your wrist diameter as you get deeper and it gets squashed down by the water pressure. The only thing that makes this watch not comply with the ISO certification for diver's watches is the fact the bezel is bidirectional, meaning it can move both ways. And that is a big no-no on diver's watches, as it means the bezel can accidentally be knocked clockwise as well, prolonging your dive time and possibly killing you, if a diver's watch is the only thing you rely your life on while diving, which I highly doubt, as diving computers have replaced watches a long time ago, and watches are worn more as a backup tool. This and the fact that most divers I know wear regular G-Shocks while diving and fancy divers' watches while they're on shore makes this more than adequate to take it with you into the depths of ocean. The bezel also doesn't feature any clicks, as it's a friction bezel, meaning a rubber gasket is giving resistance to turning. That does deprive you of the satisfying mechanical feel you get when turning a regular clicking bezel, but with this one being made of plastic, I'm not sure the sound and feel would have been as satisfying if it came with clicks. The advantage of this type of bezel, on the other hand, is that you won't have alignment issues, which has become a known Seiko problem. The rest of the case and the shroud are all made of plastic, which is something I did not expect. I thought the case will be made of steel with a plastic shroud, just like the first Lowercase Solar Tuna. But despite almost everything on this watch being made of plastic, it gives a very sturdy feel when you hold it in your hands, which is further emphasized with the heft this watch has. You really do get a feeling of weight when you pick this thing up. This made me put it on a scale and compare it to my other watches. And at 79 grams, it's heavier than all my Seiko 5s and all my G-Shocks, including the DW5000 screwback that uses a stainless steel case. This makes me think the plastic used on this watch is not your ordinary run-of-the-mill plastic you get on a $2 watch. And when you touch it, it does give a silky, premium feel. In fact, the same feel I got from the shroud of the SBEP008. The size is also very similar to the SBDN, but it's slightly larger and it wears larger. The diameter and lug-to-lug are both 49.9. This usually makes watches too big for me, but I'm still indecisive on whether or not this is too big. Technically it's not, as there's nothing overhanging my wrist. But it has such a large presence, it makes it a bit overwhelming for someone like me who wears 36 to 39mm watches most of the time. But then again, if I look at it as a G-Shock alternative, I start feeling like I can wear it, as G-Shock sizes somehow don't bother me as much as regular watches. The design is pure Tuna, with 4 screws holding the shroud, and they're in the more traditional layout, front and back, while the 300-meter Tunas and the Solar Tuna use side-to-side screws. I like this layout better, and it's clear they went with it to make room for the buttons. The watch has 4 buttons, with the mode button being textured. The buttons and functions are used in a very similar way as on Casio watches, but because of the different button layout, for example the mode button on the right side instead of the usual left, and the up and down buttons on the left instead of the usual right, I do end up pressing a wrong button sometimes, which shows just how strong the power of habit is. The crystal is perfectly flat, and behind it is the solar cell on the outer ring and the negative screen on the inner area. I usually dislike negative screens, except when they're found on solar watches, where you can use the backlight to check the time without shortening the battery life. And on this, it's even better since activating the backlight requires a simple tap on the watch or flick of the wrist. That means that you can check the time easily, even underwater, as I tested it. A positive screen would increase legibility dramatically, and although I prefer them usually, on this, I just think it would affect the aesthetics of the watch too much. So I'm glad they went with a negative. And it's a good one, as I did compare it to the PRG-270 in my unboxing video, and it proved to be better than Casio's negative display. And that was not even on the maximum contrast level that this watch offers. This excellent screen might come at a price, since I stumbled upon something very weird while going through the manual, something I have never seen with Casio. The manual says the life expectancy of the LCD panel is 7 years, which made me panic at first, but if we read further, it says the contrast might decrease. So I find this to be more about Seiko being overly cautious than people actually having to replace the screen after 7 years. But I guess only time will tell. When it comes to the functions, the watch is powered by the S802 module that is solar powered and comes with a world time function with 44 cities, a 10-hour stopwatch that measures down to 1/10 of a second and comes with a 100 lap memory, a 10-hour countdown timer settable to the second with up to 99 auto repeats, and 3 alarms. So a pretty well equipped standard digital watch. Like I said at the beginning, I did a tutorial where I covered these in detail if you want to know more. So is the Digital Tuna a G-Shock alternative, and should you replace your G-Shocks with it? In my opinion, no. It's a great watch to have next to your G-Shocks, as it offers the iconic shrouded tuna design and something different for us used to Casio. The relatively high price and the fact there is no mention of the protection shroud being available as a replacement part at a reasonable price still makes a G-Shock my choice when it comes to the rough stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the Tuna couldn't handle it, it's just that it seems too nice and a waste of money to abuse it. Think of it as more of a nice special edition G-Shock that you wouldn't wear in extreme conditions. I personally like it a lot, and if you can find one at a reasonable price, go for it. As a side note, to all the people saying this is a Casio ProTrack wannabe, as the screen layout is very similar to ProTrack's, it's not, as Seiko has been making sensor watches for ages, so you might want to check out the Seiko Alpinist line, the digital one, not the SBEP017, as those are the real ProTrack competitors with sensors. Anyways, that completes this week's review, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe by pressing this button right here, and until the next video, bye.